My name's Alan Long. I'm your Ward 4 Position 2 representative.
I'm Rhonda Adams, Ward 4, Position 1.
And tonight we're happy to have 5 of the 6 candidates. Robert Williams wrote me shortly before the forum and said that he was unable to make it tonight due to an unexpected work event. So he won't be able to be here. But what Rhonda and I have done is put together questions. And we've put them in the magic little envelope. And I'm going to pull a question out and start on one side and let the table go down and answer the question. And then we'll start at the other side on the next question. Candidates will get 2 minutes to introduce themselves here in just a moment. And like I said, to every question, people will get exactly 2 minutes to answer. And I'm probably going to cut them off right about 2 minutes and ask that they let the other person answer too. If it were me up there, I'd be long-winded, so somebody would have to cut me off. But all right.
We're glad you're all here tonight. Thank you very much. I see our city clerk just came in. Sandra, welcome. I like it that our elected official is here, and Ward 4 constituent, thank you for being here. I wanted to recognize you tonight. And the rest of you, thank you for being here. Some of you are regulars, and some of you have just come when you can. I know we can't always be at every meeting, but thank you all for being here. We thought this out in a careful way, trying to be respectful of everyone's time. At the end, we will open it up for questions from you all if we can. We're going to work to do that. So thank you all again for being here tonight.
All right. DeAndre, do you want to start by introducing yourself? You'll have about 2 minutes.
Absolutely. First of all, I would like to say good evening and thank you to Rhonda and Alan for hosting this forum. A healthy democracy requires a decent society. It requires that we are honorable, generous, tolerant, and respectful. My desire is to vigorously advocate on behalf of Ward 4 my core beliefs of promoting community progress with inclusion and equity, my experience in city government as a former city council member, my active membership on various boards and commissions support my belief that I am qualified to serve on the Fayetteville City Council. I am a member of the Washington County Democratic Central Committee. Politically, I serve as president and political director of the Northwest Arkansas Democratic Black Caucus. I'm also a member of the 3rd District Hispanic Caucus. I served as a staff assistant for U.S. Congressman Marion Berry, and I served 2 terms as a member of the Joyner City Council. As an alderman in Joyner, I developed and sustained positive relationships with my constituents. I addressed issues dealing with citizen engagement, neighborhood beautification, and supported coalitions to build diversity. I was also responsible for writing a $30,000 grant for neighborhood relating to reconstructing. I actively serve the community as the board member for the Yvonne Richardson Community Center, One Community, Main Street, Fayetteville, and the Arkansas AIDS Foundation. I've been responsible for helping reestablish the Arkansas Urban League, most importantly, a satellite office in Northwest Arkansas. In addition, I'm a member of the Emerging Leaders Group of the Rogers Lowell Chamber of Commerce and Compassion Fayetteville. I hold a Bachelor of Science from the University of Arkansas and a Master of Arts in Management and Leadership from Webster. I have a 7-point platform that includes thriving neighborhoods, viable transportation options, environmental sustainability, thoughtful growth, meaningful community engagement from every community member, promoting and sustaining small businesses, and maintaining property values, promoting public health and safety, and sustaining attractive neighborhoods. Thank you so much for your support.
Okay, my name is Craig Honchel. I'm a resident of the city of Fayetteville for the last 24 years. I've lived in Ward 4 for 17 of those years. I'd like to go ahead and thank Rhonda and Alan for having us here. I currently work at Bargo Engineering. I'm a manufacturing engineer out there. I've worked there for 10 years. Prior to that, I was at Superior Industries for 15 years. During that time of doing production work, I realized real quick that I didn't want to stand all day, so I put myself back through school. I took advantage of the educational assistance program that they had out there. I got my associate's degree during that time. In the last 5 years, in 2009, I was appointed to the Fayetteville City Planning Commission. During that time, I've looked at hundreds of projects, developmental projects. I've had input on a few ordinances throughout the city. I take a lot of pride in what I've done for the community. It's been a learning experience, to say the least. I've forged relationships and friendships with several of the city council members, the city attorney's office, just on down the line. And I'm currently a member of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. That's a mouthful. We deal with trails. So I have direct input for the trail system throughout the city. I take a lot of pride in that too. I think that's a vital part of the network that is going to be created and finished out throughout Fayetteville, Rogers, Springdale, Bentonville, all of it. I'd just like to say that one of the biggest things that I've always considered with any decision through planning has always involved it's always involved safety and public input and public impact. Thank you very much.
Again, thanks to Rhonda and Alan for having us here tonight, and thank you all for attending. I'm Ray Boudreau. I was born in Houston, Texas. My family moved to Fayetteville, Arkansas in 1961. I graduated from the Fayetteville High School and then the University of Arkansas. Upon graduation, I went into the United States Air Force, where I served for 24 and a half years, graduating that program as a colonel. After that, I was hired by a community in central Illinois to redevelop a closed military base. We called it reuse at the time. Of course, I was always hoping to get back to Fayetteville, the town I love. I was able to do that when the airport board had me down to give them a little primer on how do you redevelop a closed installation or an installation that has a new mission. So that's what I did and came down here, and then Dan Cootie hired me to be the Aviation and Economic Development Director. We had some great successes on redeveloping Drake Field. I can tell you that my priorities are about economic development. I was trained as an economic developer, and I believe strong economic development programs are very essential to create jobs for our students as they graduate from the University of Arkansas or from other educational opportunities that they might take. I think that in order to keep them in town, you got to have jobs for them, and therefore vigorous economic development recruitment programs are necessary, and I do believe that we should probably have some kind of a closing fund, much like Mike Beebe has. I can tell you that I am married to the beautiful Brenda Teal Boudreau. She's right here. Former alderman for Ward 1. We have 4 sons and 8 grandkids together, many of them whom are still around here, and that's the other reason I wanted to come back to Fayetteville. My mom resides in Brookstone, which is an assisted living facility, and my sister just recently retired from working for Fayetteville Schools. Wow, that was good.
My name is John Latour. I've lived in Fayetteville for 35 years. I've practiced accounting and law for 34 of those years. I am a social conservative and I am a fiscal conservative. As a fiscal conservative, I want to see if there's some way we can save money in our city budget. Right now we have understaffed fire protection. When we send a fireman into a fire with his team, and that is understaffed, we are putting every one of those firefighters at risk. I want to prevent that. I want to stop that. I want to get a budget that is workable, and we can save money without raising taxes to hire fire protection and police protection, 2 primary services that we all depend on for our safety and the safety of our children. We can do that through an economic incentive program for every worker for the city of Fayetteville. I would develop an incentive program that pays a cash bonus to any city employee that can show me as a CPA how this city can save $10, $15, $20, $100,000 a year. Nobody knows their jobs better than them who are working and living in those jobs. We as a city council, just like a general in any army, cannot possibly know every piece of information that we need that the troops down in the trenches have at their daily disposal. I want to bring that up to the top. and provide cash bonuses to those people who help us save money and make our budget goals. I appreciate your support. Thank you for being here as voters. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Rhonda, for sponsoring this.
Ready? My name is Philip McKnight. I moved back here in 1991. I graduated from the University of Arkansas with a degree in landscape design and urban horticulture back in 1981. I am married to my wife Angela, who is also in the audience here. We have two beautiful daughters. Both graduated from Fayetteville Public Schools, and one continued on here to the University of Arkansas, where she got her degree in undergraduate degree in hospitality management. The second one, unfortunately, went to Texas Tech. So it's kind of a mixed emotion there. The good news is that it was a full scholarship, so that worked out pretty good for us. I work for a company as a national account manager, which I manage the sales for several large retailers in the United States. I'm very familiar with the budget process, how to budget and gauge sales against profit margins, and the income statements that go along with that. I'm a past member of the Botanical Garden of the Ozarks Board of Directors, as well as treasurer, where I helped implement a budget process for that nonprofit organization, which is still actually in use today. I have currently I'm on the Parks and Recreation Board, which we review a lot of the projects that are coming through and look at the trails and everything else that's connected to the Parks and Recreation Department. I've got three main points that I would like to emphasize. The first is connectivity. How do we continue to make the connection with those communities on the other side of I-49 and the rest of Fayetteville? I think there's a large opportunity there to work with the state on a pedestrian byway over I-49. Is that it?
No.
Oh. Was that you?
I don't know how to reuse this.
Okay.
I waited until you said your name to each of you. Once you said your name, then I pressed the button. I gave you your name for free, okay? Okay.
All right.
Thank
well,
you.
I guess we'll go ahead and start with asking candidates questions. DeAndre, we'll start with you, I guess. Just gonna reach in and pull. And I'm gonna ask this question, and then you'll have an opportunity to answer it, and we'll just kind of go down
And then the next time we'll start, we'll rotate who
on
we start
the
with.
other side. And everyone will have about 2 minutes to answer the question.
Exactly.
Exactly 2 minutes, not about.
Exactly.
Good point, Ron.
Okay.
Good point. So the first question is, what is sprawl to you, and how do we control and contain sprawl appropriately with its city plan, particularly in Ward 4?
Sprawl is something that I've been reading up on, and I've noticed that several of the constituents, the citizens in Ward 4 have been concerned about it. So my interpretation, sprawl is not a, in this sense, it's not positive. So I do believe that we, as a city council member, it is very important that we focus on smart growth and smart development, and that we receive the proper input from the citizens as well relating to smart growth.
And the question is, what is sprawl?
What is sprawl to you, and how do we control and contain sprawl appropriately, particularly in Ward 4?
Okay. Sprawl, to me, is just the growth of the city beyond where localized planning has taken place. When developers reach farther out to get the better property values, and then basically what happens is that you have development happening between those the furthest out point and the closer point. So the way that we've controlled that through planning is just through good zoning practices that would control that. The sprawl that I'm concerned with is the sprawl that the university is kind of pushing out with the development of large apartments and things like that into our ward, and I'd like to keep that type of development for student housing and those types of structures back up closer to the university to where it stays out of the residential areas that are critical to the people that have to drive those corridors every day. That's what I got.
Would you like me to ask the question again, Ray?
No, I've got it, sprawl. The city council voted to expand the city limits of Fayetteville way out past Harmon Road. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. An infill is highly desired to create the density necessary to acquire and build mass transportation networks and to keep downtown areas viable. Sprawl is where development occurs outside the downtown area or the central area before it happens in the central area. I believe that sprawl is probably very, very difficult to control, because when a developer buys a piece of property and wants to develop it, goes ahead and develops it, as long as he meets the standards of the city, eventually that he can petition the city to have that annexed. Whether or not the city does, that's the question, and the city council has those reins. The city council can annex or not annex. I believe that we don't need to spread any further west. I believe that we don't need to spread any further at all of our city limits, and if I'm elected, I will vote against any petition to go further west, any further than we are currently.
Thank you.
My staff and I actually talked about sprawl today. Sprawl is defined, not just my definition, but the uncontrolled growth or haphazard growth of a city or population center. Think about incentives. I'm all about incentives. I like entrepreneurship. I like business. When I built a building on what's now MLK, I had to bring a sample of my brick to the planning department so they could approve my color. I would rather not be treated like a child. I'd rather be treated as an adult. Think of me making an investment in a building. Who has a greater incentive to make sure that building looks good and is appropriate for its setting and its environment? You may question the wisdom of business people, but these are the type of decisions that we make every day. We want to present a good appearance to the public so that more people will come in and do business with our business. I'm all for zoning ordinances and planning, but at some point we have to respect a business person's ability to think for him or herself. Indeed, it is true. We have to acknowledge that business people have some degree of logic and reasoning in their approach to business. We need to make our business environment in Fayetteville friendly, not adversarial. We don't need businesses moving to Springdale like they're currently doing, or to Benton County. We need business development here, as I pointed out at the Chamber of Commerce Forum, to broaden our tax base and give schools the needed funding. I support free enterprise. I respect a business person's ability to think for him or herself. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Philip?
Well, I guess being last, I can only add a few things because a lot of the other candidates have already hit a couple of the key points that I had. But sprawl is really about developing out past the infrastructure that is currently in place. The infrastructure that's in place can only carry so many cars, so many people back and forth in towards the city. So first off, if you're trying to develop out past the city limits, that's when we have to involve Washington County and find out what their plans are out past the city limits. Because if you look at some of the larger metropolitan areas, they have done that, where they've actually encompassed the county in part of that process. It is primarily driven by, somebody said earlier, I think Ray, by cheap land. It is driven from that. But if you don't have the infrastructure to support it, then we shouldn't be moving out past it. If we're looking at the corridor planning, and I'm thinking about Weddington Corridor, and some of the other large corridors, and some of them that are not even yet developed, we need to plan out 5, 10, 15, and 20 years so we can see what that looks like. I'm all for infill, but there's only so much infill that can happen, and to be honest with you, I have not studied what that infill requirement or quantity is. But we really need to make sure that the infrastructure that we have in place is going to support any further development outside of that area. Thanks. Can I use several seconds on that?
You want it for the next question?
Yeah.
24 seconds.
Well, this time we're going to start with Philip. Okay. Many Fayetteville citizens own pets. Do you believe that Fayetteville should be a mandatory spay-neuter community? And if yes, how would you start this process? If no, what is the reason?
I think as far as the spay-neuter process goes, I think that if you have a domestic pet that you're not ever going to breed for puppies or kittens or anything like that, then I think it makes a reasonable choice to go ahead and have that done, because it's a matter of the health of the animal as opposed to whether you have extra kittens or puppies. So I really think you have to put that responsibility onto the owner of the pet, and it's their choice whether to spay or neuter. We can only recommend that it's a spay-neuter community, but I think it's really the responsibility of the individual pet owner whether they're going to do that or not.
John?
Coercion is always easier than persuasion. Let's leave our people free to choose. I strongly recommend and agree with Phil, leave the pet owner free to choose for his or her pet. Instead of having a one-size-fits-all policy, let's have variety. Some families who, in my family, I have to work against it. My children want kittens, and I don't want kittens, okay? But that's a family decision to be made. As a city, if someone is abusing kittens or abusing their pets, then maybe we should step in to protect the animals. But as far as us making a decision for those families, let's leave them free to choose for themselves. They have the most information. They're the best. They're in the best position to make that choice.
Thanks, John. Ray?
We have a corgi, and our corgi's name is Buffy, and Buffy is spay. Now, do I think we should make it a mandatory spay-neuter community? I agree with John. I agree with Philip. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate. I do think it's appropriate that we insist upon pet owners to control their pets, and we already do that. There are leash laws. There are ways in which we can ensure that pet owners take care of their pets. But requiring them to be spayed or neutered, I don't think that's a good thing.
And I guess, as McKnight said, being on this end of it, I agree with everything that was said. I don't agree with making anything mandatory on a citizen. I have pets. I think I know what's best for the pets that I have. I know which pets do what. I believe in spaying and neutering your pets. I think that's a responsible thing to do. But as far as mandating that on the citizenry of Fayetteville, I don't agree with that. I don't think that putting something like that in place does anything but cause a little bit of hostility, with some people that would have an issue with that. So.
Okay. DeAndre?
I'm going to echo the sentiments of these other gentlemen. I'm not a pet owner, but when I choose to become one, then I don't think that I would prefer if the city got involved in in telling me what I should do as it relates to being a parent to my pet. So.
All right, the next question, we'll start with DeAndre. Let's start with somebody. We'll start with Ray, and we'll go this way because you're in the middle. And we'll go this way, come back around to Philip, and then John.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Rhonda's done this before, and I have.
It stinks being first.
It does.
Yeah.
Ray, the question is, single-family home over occupancy is a difficult issue to correct. Fayetteville is a university town with thousands of students moving into neighborhoods each year. How would you work to resolve this issue specifically?
We've discussed this problem in several meetings, and the city council did a nice job of passing an ordinance which said that no more than 3 unrelated persons can live in any one single-family home. I'm not so sure that that's getting the job done, however, because it's not really the fact that you've got 3 unrelated or whether you have 3 related. It's all about behavior. We all know about the behavior of students in residential areas. Cars parked on the grass, too many cars, not mowing the grass. I've walked neighborhoods now for how many weeks? 3 weeks, and you can tell without seeing a car, without knowing any information, which house belongs to a student resident or several student residents, because they don't edge their grass, they don't pick up their clippings, and that kind of thing. So what do I think would be the right thing to do? I think that what we need to do is put the onus upon the owner, onus upon the landlord. So if someone has a violation, we must report it, because all of these issues happen to be complaint driven. So we must report it. Once we report that issue, then the landlord has a very limited amount of time in which to correct that problem. If they don't correct that problem, we have business licenses in this town, then we withdraw their business license, because any landlord or any rental company that has more than 3 units has to have a business license. You jerk their business license, oh, that'll get their attention. And if that doesn't get their attention, how about a fine of some kind? I think that we ought to make the landlord, the homeowner, the company that's renting these properties responsible. The only way to make them responsible is to get their attention.
Thank you, Ray. Greg?
Okay, I personally went through a huge mess with this a couple years ago. The only way that I had any kind of resolution was working back through the university, and I think that's the only way. The way that the ordinance is written, as far as enforcement goes, I think the only way that you're going to get any kind of reaction out of the students is have some kind of accountability back through the university. I'm not all for some kind of renter's registration per se, but the only people that know where these kids are at are the people that work at the university. I think that they could have some kind of registry system back through the university to where there's accountability where these students are at. And that's the only way. The police are too busy to go out and take care of a party and things like that, and I don't expect them to come out and address a speeding car every single time, things like that. And I agree with what Ray's saying. You can typically always tell where the rental houses are at, but it all just comes down to accountability. And I think the only way that we get that back is back through the university. We work in conjunction with them through registration and or some kind of accountability office. The Housing Authority, I think, is who I dealt with when I was talking with them with the issue that I had. And that was the only way that I got any kind of resolution, and it took care of the problem. And it was pretty quick. So,
DeAndre?
Well, I believe that as a council member, it is our job to make sure that whatever ordinance that we have, that we enforce it, but also let's look at ways how we can develop a better relationship with the university as it relates to student housing, and then holding those students accountable. Saying that, making sure that the ordinance that we have, that it's very transparent and that they know exactly, without the shadow of a doubt, where we stand on the issue and what we're going to do if they don't do what they're supposed to do.
Thank you. All right.
Now,
Philip?
to me, or?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I would tell you that it is a city ordinance. 3 or more unrelated people cannot live in the same house. I agree 100% with holding those people accountable, whether it is through rental registration or through a university registration of some sort. And I think you have to hold them accountable. To me, the biggest opportunity is why, as neighbors, are we responsible for continually following up to make sure that our city ordinances are followed? I know from a personal experience that we have spent more than 15, 20 phone calls, 15 or 20 emails to various individuals to try to get resolution on an opportunity of somebody renting a house in our neighborhood that had 5 or 6 people there. Now, everybody knows if you have 5 or 6 people there, well, the girlfriends or the boyfriends are going to be there too. And that's where the opportunity begins, is that you start having a large mass of people coming and going from that individual house. We do have to hold the homeowners accountable. I think you've heard that before too as well. How we do that, I think that would be decided. I think we'd have to have some input from a bunch of different individuals on how to resolve that. But we do need to hold somebody accountable because it is an opportunity with the neighbors and the property values of the adjacency neighbors.
John?
Can you guess what I might say? Okay. I would rather us focus on results, not causes. What's the problem with 10 people living in a house? Is it just the fact that there are 10 people? Or is it that they're noisy? Or there's a lot of coming and going? Some of you in this room know my wife and I have 9 children. There are 11 people living in my house, plus 2 dogs and a few cats. Okay? I don't think my neighbors, Rhonda, complain about the noise we make. Okay? So I think our laws need to be rationally related to the objective the law is trying to accomplish. If I, by myself, I bet I can make too much noise by myself, one person living in a house. Talk politics with me and you'll see. Okay? What we want are quiet neighborhoods. What we want are neighborhoods with less traffic. If you really want that, you can't live next door to the Razorback Stadium like I do. Okay? Because there's going to be coming and going from all sorts of activities. We can't control, we can't micromanage people to that extent. Let's focus on results. Enforce the noise ordinance. If you can have 20 people in a house and not everybody drives a car, maybe there's only 2 cars, maybe there's a 15-passenger van. So there's not a lot of traffic and they're quiet. What's the problem with it? Not a problem. Let's enforce the noise ordinance. Let's enforce the parking ordinances so you can't have cars parked in the front yard. I'm all for those. I'm finished.
Good.
Thanks.
You had 20 seconds.
Great.
All right. On this one, we'll start with John.
I went last, so I should go first.
Yeah,
Yep.
there you go.
All right, John. Do you attend Ward 4 meetings, and do you have the time available to commit to regular attendance at weekly meetings, committee service, and other requirements, including Ward 4 meetings each month?
If I'm elected, when I'm elected, I will make the time. I'm a strong believer in we have time for what we want to have time for. Until I decided to run, Alan, quite honestly and frankly, I'm going to be very naked here, I did not know what ward I was in. So no, I have not attended Ward 4 meetings. Okay? Remember, I'm the guy that believes the best way to serve the people of Fayetteville is to let the free markets function and do what they do best, and let innovation and discovery and exploration take place among the entrepreneurs of our city. Let them chase their dreams within the legal framework and regulatory framework that we establish for them. I would like for that to be as free as possible, not as restrictive as possible. The next Sam Walton, the next Stephen Jobs, the next Isaac Newton, the next you name it, him or her, could very well be living next door to us. But if we clamp down and say you have to go in this box or this hole, and we don't leave them free to innovate and discover, we miss a great opportunity. Let's leave people free to chase their dreams. I will go to Ward 4 meetings. I very much support this sort of setting where elected officials or prospective elected officials are held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Ray?
Me? Okay. I have not attended Ward 4 meetings in a long time. I did a lot of years ago when I first got here. But I did watch the latest Ward 4 meeting when Paul Becker came and gave the briefing on the budget to this forum. Do I have time? Yes, I have time. I am currently retired from the city of Fayetteville. I've got plenty of time to serve on committees, plenty of time to do my homework so that I make good decisions. I have plenty of time to serve on committees and to attend Ward 4 meetings and to organize them if I have to. So yes, I would like to. I'd like to attend those meetings in the future because I think they're quite interesting.
Thank you, Ray.
These meetings are actually what got me. There's a lot of people here that are still very familiar to me. That I was attending Ward 4 meetings back in 2006, I think is when I started attending. As of late, no, I haven't. With Planning Commission, the meetings are typically Monday nights, correct? Because the planning meetings are every other Monday, so I'm either in planning, reading, doing something city-related but not directly to Ward 4. I do take it, any development that comes through planning in regard to Ward 4, I look at everything very close. I give it a lot of consideration, anything that's built remotely close to I-49 or Weddington. That is a huge concern to me in the future development of that entire exchange. But as far as making time for these meetings, I think this is where I met Lionel Jordan, were these meetings. There's a lot of relationships that I've made through these ward meetings, and I think they're very important to this community.
I haven't had the opportunity to attend the ward meetings. However, I follow them online. I'm committed to attending all of the regular scheduled city council meetings and the ward meetings.
Philip?
I think a lot of people in the room recognize me because I have been very active in some of the Ward 4 meetings, not only currently in the last 6 or 8 weeks, or 6 to 8 months, I guess, but some of those beforehand too as well. As far as time goes, I think it's important to know that I would not have made the commitment to run for this position if I did not feel like I was going to be able to invest the time and effort to do the best job I can for Ward 4. Thank you.
Okay. This time we'll start with Ray.
I haven't started yet.
You haven't started. Craig, okay. All right, Craig, the question is, while working to approve the city budget, what areas would you make a priority? Would you approve of using the city's free reserves to give employee raises, build more infrastructure, or balance the budget?
That would be one of the 3 choices of any extra money.
Those are just examples.
Budgetary issues, I think, primarily what we have to look at first, infrastructure. Everything goes back, with me, infrastructure is everything. If the police, the fire, the emergency personnel, if those people are not taken care of and those services are not in place, we have a long road to hoe as far as protecting the community and making this a livable, viable community for the city, for the citizens of Fayetteville. And anything that has to do with the infrastructure, I mean, that goes to roads, just anything that goes to the core infrastructure of the city. The other examples that you gave, I'm kind of losing myself, talking too much.
I ask, would you approve of using the city's free reserves to give employee raises, build more infrastructure, balance the budget, or other?
Well, I'd look at balancing the budget. I mean, before I would even discuss raises. I mean, I think that's essential to anything, to running any kind of business, is you have to establish a budget, maintain a budget, and stay on budget. And then anything outside of the scope of that, anything's up for discussion.
Okay. Yeah.
As a responsibility to the citizens of Fayetteville, my top priority would be, of course, to balance the budget, sustain a budget, maintain a budget.
And the other part of the question was, what areas would you make a priority?
looking at what's needed. Start talking to the citizens, visiting with other council members and seeing what has been top priority and build upon that. Making sure that we continue what we've started.
Okay, Philip?
Is it me? Okay. As far as using the free reserve to balance the budget, I think you have to look at a couple of things that go hand in hand. I think first off, to balance the budget is priority, but I don't think that I think we've done the due diligence in the budget reviews and stuff that I've looked at, and our, I guess, infrastructure budget and things like that. I'm trying to think of unfunded projects. I think some of those are priority, but I think that the using the reserve has to go hand in hand with employee raises too as well, because I don't think that we can sustain top-notch police, fire, and city crew if their wages are not competitive across the board. So I think they have to be competitive. There's several things within the competitiveness that I think of when I say that. First would be the actual pay that they're receiving, the benefits they're receiving, and how they compare to everybody else. And quite honestly, if we're status quo with the rest of the county or the metropolitan, I think we need to look at that, because we want to keep the best people here in our departments, because if we don't pay competitive, then they are very likely to leave to another city. And why would we want to invest the money and the time to train a new fireman or a new policeman when we already have somebody here already well qualified? So I think it's important to look at those in conjunction with each other.
Okay. Thank you, Philip. Did y'all need me to read the question again? I know we.
No.
Okay.
I have my answer formulated.
Okay.
In my job, if I make a mistake, I flip my pencil over and erase it, or but more likely these days I hit the backspace and correct the mistake. A firefighter's job and a police officer's job, if they make a mistake, we all go to a funeral. They're laying their lives on the line every day to keep me and my children safe, and my wife. They're serving the public in ways you and I, as non-firefighters and non-police officers, can hardly imagine. They deserve the highest priority in our spending and our budgetary process. I'm a certified public accountant. I have an MBA from the University of Arkansas. I have a law degree from a no-name school in California. It doesn't matter. Okay? I know budgets. I know business. I know management. Made good grades in MBA school, Alan. I can manage a budget. My priorities would be first responders, those people who lay their lives on the line every day. I think it is obscene that we have unfilled positions on our fire department right now, if they're still unfilled. We're placing people at risk needlessly. We should address that immediately. If I'm elected, when I'm elected, I will address that to the best of my ability. That's my priority.
My turn, I guess? Thank you for the question. I am a conservative when it comes to budgeting, which means I believe that we should always have a balanced budget. And I can tell you, I listened to Paul Becker on the computer when he briefed this August forum about how the budget was presented and how it was created, and it is a balanced budget. And I think the staff in the budget office and Paul Becker do a great job of keeping that budget, at least of the general fund, which is the one that is always at most contingent. My priority is just like John. I was a base commander, and the fire and police services worked for me. I was a chief of security police, and the police worked for me. And you know what? They got the best we could get. And I think we should give the best that we can get to our firefighters and our police officers. Those folks are the ones that are putting on the line for us. And you know what? I also had the opportunity as a base commander to negotiate union contracts with firefighters and with people who served in other services on the military base. And I can tell you, as long as everybody is friendly and everybody is wanting the best for the community, That's not a problem. Everybody wins. I like firefighters, I like cops. By golly, they deserve the best. Thanks.
I think that's everyone on that question.
Everybody answer that?
Somebody has to.
Who hasn't gone first? You went first. Everybody's gone first?
Everybody.
I think so.
We're back to DeAndre.
Start with DeAndre again. In what capacity have you offered your time and energy over the years to serve our city?
In 2012, I worked on a project, and it's a continuing project with Mayor Jordan, and that is recruiting diversity for the police and fire department. And what we did, we sent out test information for the civil service test. And so we sent that to colleges and universities across the state, hoping that we can get those applicants to become employed as firemen, as firefighters and police officers in Fayetteville. And we're still working on that.
Philip?
Who's next? That's a good question. Currently, I'm serving on the Parks and Recreation Board. That takes quite a bit of time for all the research and everything that takes place as far as all the different trails and projects coming up. I had mentioned earlier that I served on the Botanical Gardens Board, which is not a city entity, but it is a service entity to the city of Fayetteville as far as a fantastic opportunity for people to visit our city. So it's more, I guess, income producing for the city via sales tax and visitors and things like that. So, thanks.
Thank you. John?
Get up early tomorrow morning, go to Lowe's over on MLK. If you get there around 6 when the store opens, you'll notice there are no cars parked up by the store. They're all parked out in the parking lot. Who do you think owns those cars? Think those are customers that park way away from the door? No, they're employees. That's how they serve the public. I think free enterprise serves the public better than any government agency, for the most part. There are certain public works that are better carried out by municipal government. Beyond that, business people are better equipped and more knowledgeable about how to serve people's needs. I have served as a CPA in this city for 34 years. I've consulted with small businesses, I've consulted with medium businesses. I've consulted with successful businesses, I've consulted with failing businesses. I know what works and what doesn't work. We want Fayetteville to work, and I know how to do that. Volunteer time is valuable to a degree. The more serious service for all of our citizens are businesses and enterprises that meet the needs and desires of our city occupants.
I've been a public servant my entire career with the Air Force, and then with the municipality in Illinois, and then serving the citizens of Fayetteville as the Director of Aviation. So what have I done for my city lately? Well, I only recently retired. Now I'm president of the Arkansas Air and Military Museum Board of Directors, and our executive director is leaving, so I'll be taking over the operation of that museum as a volunteer for the near future. I'm a member of the Sequoia United Methodist Church Council Board, and I chair that board. I am also the chairman of the Northwest Arkansas Certified Development Company, which takes care of a lot of services to the citizens of all of Northwest Arkansas. And I'm vice chairman of the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development District, which again takes care of money coming out of the federal government into communities throughout Northwest Arkansas. I'm the president-elect of the Fayetteville Rotary Club, and will take that office in July. Currently, I act as program chairman, so we have some pretty great programs at the Rotary Club. If you'd like to be a guest, let me know, and I'll take you as my guest. Okay? Whoop, I forgot one other thing. I've been on the Chamber of Commerce Transportation Committee for 12 years. I'm still on that committee, and I'm past chairman of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Greg.
Okay. I'm going to kind of preface this by saying that where I grew up in Texas, I grew up in Amarillo, and I never, for an instance, understood what community was. It was a great place to grow up, but I really didn't care about where I was at. And that's one of the things with moving to Fayetteville. After the birth of my first daughter, getting her into the public school system, I started volunteering time. I started Watchdog Dad's program at Asbel Elementary. That carried on to volunteering time through the school, Fayetteville Public School System. I was honored as being one of the outstanding, I was recognized as being one of the outstanding volunteers of the year. And then from that, it's springboarded into the Parks and Recreation Department. I coached basketball, I coached softball, I've coached baseball. I spent a lot of time with a lot of kids and a lot of families, and it has been a fantastic experience for me. I was part of the Fayetteville Forward committees after the election in 2008. I'm currently on the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, which is new to me in the sense that I'm not a bikehead. I mean, it's the knowledge that I'm gaining from the people in that community. It's amazing to me how serious people take that type of activity. It was very foreign to me, and that's why I wanted to get involved with it, so I would learn about it. And I guess I'm going to go ahead and say my time in planning, because there was a period of time where I wasn't paid, so it was all volunteer for about a year. But it's just been one of those things where it's just the knowledge that you gain, the relationships that you make through the years and years and years of just interacting with the people in this community. I can't say it enough. This is a great community.
All right, our next question will start with Craig. Just going to start going down the line now. You're lucky you drew this one. If elected, how would you approach zoning issues? Do you view the input of constituents as more, less, or equally valuable to the input from the Planning Commission?
Boy, that's tough, because and that is one of the biggest things that you deal with as a city planner. Is zoning, and how neighborhoods can join and how they relate to each other with a zoning issue, and that's basically what got me involved with where I'm at today. It was a zoning issue. It was I think it was an RMF 24 or 48 that was proposed right next to an RSF 4, and I don't know if any of that makes sense to a lot of people, but the input from neighbors, any kind of zoning issue, I have always listened to the neighborhoods first. I think that FCON, the Fayetteville Chamber of Neighborhoods, I think that's a very empowering branch of the community where people who feel like they don't have a voice, they can be heard. And those voices have huge impact. And I think that it's very important to listen to the people because I don't have to live it. That's the thing, is that I don't have to live in neighborhoods that gets a 4-story apartment complex put up in their backyard. It doesn't impact me directly. It's very passive how it impacts me. But the people that have to live there, you have to take that into consideration. And I don't care what that means overall, economically and all these other things. You have to listen to the people that have to live with that every single day. I think that's very important to listen to the people in that regard.
Thank you, Craig. DeAndre?
It is very important to build a relationship with the constituents, so therefore, I will make sure that their input is top priority. Always top priority.
To me?
Philip?
I think as far as zoning issues, I think the first thing you have to look at is compatibility. Is the structure or is the development compatible with the neighboring buildings, with the neighbors in general and the neighborhood primarily? I think then you have to evaluate whether or not the infrastructure is there to support that development. whether the highways, the byways, and traffic lights are going to be able to support that particular development. The third thing I would ask is that, does it meet all of the requirements of the city of Fayetteville? I think you have to go through the list of opportunities that we present to the developer and say, does it meet them? Does it meet all the requirements that we want them to have? And I think after all that's decided, I think you have to go and get public input to see whether or not the neighbors actually want to live next to that facility or live next to that apartment building. I think that's very important, because I think that relates back to whether the neighbors think it's compatible or not. So I think that those would kind of be the 4 steps that I would look at as far as compatibility, the infrastructure support, does it meet all the Fayetteville requirements, and then to follow up with public input to make sure that everybody's in agreement that it does match. Thanks.
John?
Zoning regulations are given a lot of power by our court system. I'm drawing on my legal background now. Municipal governments have broad powers to enact zoning regulations. The theory in legal circles is if you don't like the zoning regulations, you'll unelect the local officials that enacted them. So there's redress through the election process. That is the ultimate in responding to the people who live with the zoning laws that we enact. They can unelect us. But maybe you wouldn't want to go to that great an extreme. Of course, elected officials should listen to the neighbors who have to live with the advantages and disadvantages of a development. I am concerned, however, that pulling a building permit from our city government can take 45 days. In Rogers and Bentonville, cities I don't think are badly planned, they can usually get a permit within a day or 2. I don't think the process has to be arduous or difficult or time-consuming. I'm all for meeting our city's goals and objectives, but there should be a way that that can happen without taking 10 times or 20 times as long as a comparable city. That doesn't seem reasonable to me. I'm all for public input. I'm all for listening to the public and going by what they say.
Thank you, John.
Nick, could you read that question again? Because we've had 3 different answers, and I want to make sure I get the right answer.
Yeah, well, the right question?
Or the right question.
Okay. The question is, if elected, how would you approach zoning issues? Do you view the input of constituents as more or less or equally valuable to the input from the Planning Commission?
I think we have a wonderful staff down in planning that works very, very hard to address all zoning issues when they come up. Zoning is already established. And so the only zoning issue that I can imagine would be a change of zoning for a parcel or a change of zoning for an area. When that occurs, the staff puts together a plan, listens, and the Planning Commission listens to the request. They recommend or non-recommend. Then there's a public hearing. Before it ever even gets to the City Council, the public is addressed and the public has an opportunity to express their opinion. I think public input is very, very important when it comes to zoning issues. Staff does a great job. We have a good UDO which shows what the zoning is, but the public wins the day. They're always the deciding factor.
All right. Okay, I think that was everyone.
Was
You
that
had a
all?
chance
I thought he
to
still-
answer that. Craig started that
Oh,
one.
yeah, you were first.
All right, Ray. Well, you'll get to start us out this
Oh, I
time
knew
then.
that. Yeah, I better write it down.
Okay, the question is, Ward 4 has fewer miles of city trails than any other ward. Do you believe that the city should look at Fayetteville as a whole while planning for new trails, or do you believe that Ward 4 trail funding should be increased? If you believe the funding should be increased for Ward 4, in what specific ways would you work for that funding?
Well, if I'm elected, I'll make sure that the funding is there for Ward 4 first. Now,
Good luck.
I'll do whatever. Good luck. Is that the answer? Yes, I am. The thing is that I've reviewed the trail map, and I think I have a copy of it right here that I've been looking at over the last few days. And yes, we are low on the number of trails, but there is a plan. And the plan's pretty comprehensive. There are new trails to be built on the west side, and I know I have talked to my former boss, Terry Gully, and I know that they are getting ready to start doing that construction next year. There's quite a bit of money going into trails on the west side next year. Do I think trails are important? As an economic developer, one of the most important things used to attract new business and industry and get new jobs for our people are quality of life. One of the largest and most significant issues that contribute to quality of life are a trail network, an outdoor network, parks and recreation services, those kind of things families want. You know, the American dream. I want a house in the suburbs with a picket fence, and I want a dog and a cat, and I want access to the trails and the baseball fields. So, you know, all that stuff is good, and I think trails in Ward 4 are important. We have huge residential neighborhoods, and I think that the trails are going to be constructed. The one thing they haven't planned yet is the T's and the offshoots to get into each of the neighborhoods, and that's what I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
You know, the trail system, the way that it's laid out, I think each ward has monies allocated per ward. I'm hoping I'm saying this correctly. I should know this. But basically what it comes down to is connectivity and the availability of property to make the trail system flow. And I know that that's a hurdle with the trails coordinator, Matt, that he works tirelessly at trying to acquire property to get the connectivity. And I think that that's, as opposed to saying that we're determined to spend every single penny that we have allocated in our ward this fiscal year, you know, I think it's better to do what we can to keep the trails updated and nice. But I think it's better to kind of plan towards the future and towards future connectivity for those trails and make sure that that money's available when those properties come through, when that land's available, to make sure that we can make a full connection through. Because that is the thing. If you look at the map, you have just little stubs here and there, and they just kind of off to a land of nowhere. And that is the task at hand, is just trying to acquire those properties between those segmented pieces of the trail system. And I think once we start getting those properties in hand and we have the money available, then we'll make connection, and it's just going to be a fantastic network for the city too. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Fayetteville has one of the highest rated trails in the world or nation. I can't remember which. Sure. I'm pretty sure it was the world. I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to say it was the world.
Universe.
The universe. The trail system was rated in the top 20, I do believe. I know I read it somewhere, but yeah, I'm very proud to be part of that entire process.
DeAndre?
Could you repeat the question, Alan?
Sure. Ward 4 has fewer miles of city trails than any other ward. Do you believe that the city should look at Fayetteville as a whole while planning for new trails, or do you believe that Ward 4 trail funding should be increased? If you believe the funding should be increased, in what specific ways would you work for that funding?
I think that the funding should definitely be increased. And in order to get that, looking at the budget and talking with council members from other wards to see how they could help us in our ward. Where I live, I see people jogging and running the sidewalks, and I'm thinking if we had more trails, then, I mean, exercising and working out, people will really benefit from that. So.
Philip?
Thanks, Alan. To me, the biggest opportunity on the trail system in Ward 4 is actually the connectivity to the rest of the city. So we started out with the connector underneath Porter Road, which is now, the bridge is under construction. understand that. You got to have the new bridge and stuff, but that connectivity has been severed. The second biggest opportunity to me as far as connectivity is over the Weddington overpass on I-49. Now, we had a meeting, or I guess a public input session with the State Department at Asbell School over the new intersection going in up by Sam's Club. And I asked one of the gentlemen there, what is the status on the overpass, the pedestrian overpass over I-49 at Weddington? And he told me after a couple phone calls that it looks like that it's going to be 2016 to 2017 before they start that construction. I think we need to emphasize that they need to get that started sooner than that. Any way they can get that plan to increase that connectivity. The third connectivity part to me, as far as connecting the trails in Ward 4, is going to be down by MLK. And I know we're working on it. We're looking at it, trying to figure out how we're going to make that connection. And then the fourth one's going to be the regional park. We've got to figure out, and it's in the works, we've just approved some acceptance of some lands for that park system to begin that process across Ward 4 down to the new regional park. The other thing that I want to mention, along with trails and parks and stuff, we've got to figure out how to make all the grade schools in Ward 4 and middle schools walkable. There are some opportunities on some of our current streets and sidewalks being narrow or non-existent. We've got to make sure all the kids have the ability to walk to school and encourage them to do that, because that activity starts at that age level.
Thank you.
Thanks.
John?
One of the hallmarks of my campaign is economic development. To the extent that trails and outdoor facilities like our regional park that's now planned and probably will be built brings more tourism into our area, I support it. Tourism is a great industry. They come, they spend their money, and they go home. We get sales tax, we get our hotel motel tax. It helps our city budget. It helps our city provide the basic services that you and I depend on for our family's safety every day. Trails are an integral part of what Fayetteville is. My family and I had a delightful time biking along the trails in Holland, Michigan. Ever hear of it? That was my first experience with bike trails. At that time, Fayetteville had none, to my knowledge. I was delighted, and my family, more than me, uses those trails every year, every biking season. I have a very large investment in bicycles with my size of family. So we're big believers in bike trails. To the extent that Ward 4 has fewer trails than the other wards, I also believe in equal protection under the law for everyone. Of course I'll fight for funding for Ward 4 trails. Don't give it all to Ward 1, 2, and 3 and forget us. Ward 4 is probably poised to grow the most. That's where we need the planning. That's where we need the trails.
I think I started. Yeah.
All right, John, you'll get to start on this one. We have 2 questions left, and each candidate will get 1 minute to answer both of these.
Okay.
Each of these questions. And we'll start with John. Did we start with you last? No, we started with Ray last time.
I think it's my turn.
We'll start with John. What level of importance do you place on our natural resources like clean streams and air? Would you work to promote green infrastructure in Fayetteville, and if so, how?
Well, you asked me if I'm in favor of apple pie and motherhood, of course. Of course I'm in favor of clean air and clean water. Who's against it? Et cetera. The question becomes, how can we best achieve those results with the most efficient use of our resources? Okay? Our federal government has many regulations through our Environmental Protection Agency on clean water and clean air. I don't think we're in danger of running out just yet. Now, I understand there's scientific research going on the depletion of certain aquifers, probably here in Arkansas. And our grandchildren may live radically different from the way you and I live. Such as, I still wash my car with water. Maybe 50 years from now, that will be considered obscene. and wasteful. Maybe we'll wash our cars with these chemical compounds you can buy now to wash your car waterless. I'm all for the city of Fayetteville encouraging through education
Good job.
that use.
Thank you. All right, Ray, the question's
It
up for
gave you
you.
a chance to do something.
Conserving natural resources is a no-brainer. Of course, we want to conserve natural resources. I have 8 grandkids, and they will have families, and they will have kids and grandkids, and you want to conserve natural resources for posterity and for the future. How would I do that? I have been a party to a riparian zone project out on Drake Field where we partnered with the streams folks, and we rerouted the branch to the White River, and it turned out to be an outstanding project. Being part of the natural resource and being part of the green community not only is good for natural resources, it's also good for the beauty that we enjoy in our wonderful community. This is a great place to live. Everybody loves it, and being green is a good thing.
Right?
As far as the green community, I'm in favor of it. I think that the city has already taken steps with their LEED certification program using, I think, the solar power panels that they put in place on the library. I think the city's setting examples for others to follow, and I think that's important for the government to do it that way, to either incentivize people to follow that lead and or give examples of how you can do these things throughout the city on your own. As far as being part of the green network, I think preserving any kind of natural resource is critical to future generations. I agree with that 100%.
Thank you. Andre?
Yes, I am for preserving natural resources, and I will examine what federal and state opportunities are available to help us in Fayetteville to ensure that we maintain them.
Thank you. Bill?
Absolutely. I'm all for, just like everybody else, preserving the green resources that we have. But I think if you look at the city of Fayetteville and you look at the not only the downtown area but some of the outlying areas, that is what makes Fayetteville different, is that we protect not only our green space, but we expect it to be protected, and we increase it whenever we can. Not to the detriment of the developer or anybody else, but we have certain expectations when you develop in Fayetteville, and that's part of that green look, that green alliance. That is the reason that we look different.
Thank you. All right, well, that's everyone except we're going to start with Philip on this last question.
Okay.
The question is, and you have 1 minute to respond. Why do you want to be Ward 4's representative on the Fayetteville City Council?
My main purpose for wanting to be your Ward 4 representative is because I believe in a few things. First off, I believe that I can provide the necessary acumen to work on the budget, the dollars, because I've had experience at that. The second thing is I'm a horticulturist. I liked green plants. That's what I studied. That's what I did for a living for a while, and I like green plants. And I think that, like I said before, that's what makes Fayetteville different. As far as serving, I believe that I have the ability to come to a consensus on opposite sides of the group, to come with a consensus that is acceptable to both sides of any type of agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Or Philip.
I'd like to be your Ward 4 alderman to bring business and common sense to the city council. I will work to create an environment that leaves people, to the maximum extent possible, free to make their own choices and live their lives and pursue their dreams. I will work to repeal ordinances that inhibit that free expression. I don't care your color, your sexual orientation, the length of your hair, what you believe. I'll even tolerate a Democrat.
You'd have to.
That's right, I have to. Okay. But I want you free. That's what I want to work for, is freedom for our citizens within our regulatory environment.
Thanks, John. Sure. Ray.
I've worked for government all of my professional life. The United States government, city government in Rantoul, Illinois, and the city government in Fayetteville, Arkansas. All that time I have wondered, gee whiz, why don't people who are out creating jobs, why don't people who have experience in business or in industry, why don't people who are smart, have great intellect, why don't they serve on these boards? I can't complain if I don't present myself to you as a candidate to serve on the city council and represent you, the citizens of Ward 4. That's all I wish to do, is to represent you as part of the city council of Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Thanks, Ray. Great.
You're kind of stealing my thunder for my closing statement. But,
We'll get there.
No, the reason that I would like to represent the people, the citizens of Ward 4, is just the ties, like I said, the ties that I've made back through the community over the years. I've lived here for a long time, specifically in Ward 4. I've watched kids actually graduate high school and on into college now. It's exciting to me to see those young kids are now young adults, and they have families, and it's incredible to me to have an opportunity to actually have a chance to represent them as a government leader. It's a big deal to me. It would be a huge honor to me to bring the economy back into Fayetteville. That is one thing that I would love to see again, is industry come back to Fayetteville, and everybody having a good job and seeing their kids grow up the right way like they do in Fayetteville.
DeAndre?
I want to serve the citizens of Fayetteville because Northwest Arkansas is growing, and city government must reflect that growth. I want to be a part of, I want to serve Fayetteville to sustain a vibrant, inclusive government, and I want to promote community progress with inclusion and equity. That's why I desire to serve.
Thank you. All right, well, we are right on schedule at 7:20, and we've asked each of our 5 questions. So we'll give each candidate 2 minutes for closing statements, and we'll start with the opposite side of the room at Philip, since we let DeAndre start the introductions.
I think that the opportunities in Ward 4 boil down to 3 specific points. First off would be connectivity. We talked a little bit earlier about connectivity between the other side of the interstate and to the rest of the city. I think that's important to get that part done. I think also that we have to have safe sidewalks for our kids to actually walk to school. I think that's where a lot of recreation and exercise starts, is the ability to walk to grade school. Everybody always starts out, when I was in grade school, I walked 4 miles to school. Yeah, both ways, uphill both ways. So I think it's important to those kids to be able to walk to school. That's trail and sidewalks. Even though in Ward 4 we have a lot of new sidewalks, it's primarily from development within Ward 4. We need to look at some of our old existing sidewalks and renovate those. Youth participation in sports, the second thing that I want to talk about, is we have got to get the regional park completed. We've got phase 1 partially completed. We are missing 1 baseball field. To me, it's a huge opportunity for the kids in Ward 4 that are a little bit down lower on the totem pole being able to participate in all the youth sports. We have to provide mentors for those kids and get them there without any barriers to transportation. The third point is increased property owners' protection. I believe that we need to enforce the rules that are on the books. The 3 non-related people living in 1 residence. We need to increase police protection through routes, through added routes to Ward 4. We are the growing ward in this city, we need to revisit that and look and see if there's an availability to add another route. Code enforcement, we all know it's complaint driven. Those of us that have written and complained, it's complaint driven. We need to figure out how an easier way to make sure that we can enforce the codes that are on the book.
Thank you, Philip. John?
It's the same old song, second verse. I'd like to be your councilman from Ward 4 to make sure that our citizens, whoever you are, whatever your political stripe, are left free to pursue your dreams. It doesn't do us any good to have a First Amendment to the Constitution if our city government, where we live and work and play, has more restrictions on free speech. It doesn't do us any good to have a First Amendment that guarantees right of assembly and right of association if we have a city government that places further restrictions on those. I want to enact laws and leave us free to choose our own destinies. To do that, we have to have a regulatory environment that leaves you free to choose. That's what I'm about. I'm about developing our city economically. Business people need that freedom to innovate, to discover, to explore what we need most. The most efficient way of doing something. Clean water, clean air, good things, but how do we get there? Those are where the questions are. How do you do it efficiently? I want to leave people free to innovate in that way. I want to repeal ordinances that I think inhibit business. A very controversial ordinance that's coming to a public vote, and I strongly support that, public vote, is this 119 ordinance. I'd like to see that go away. I think it's overreaching and overbroad. I support equal rights for all people, but that's a bad way to get there. Thank you.
Right?
I'm dedicated to taking the necessary steps to attract quality business and industry to our community. As a trained economic developer, I want to create ordinances which create an environment where business and industry can grow and prosper. We need incentive programs to compete with other communities to get new businesses in our community, and new industry to build here. We need to create those jobs for our people when they graduate from high school or university as they desire. I would like to create a closing fund for our government, much like Governor Mike Beebe has. We need to promote our image of business friendly. It may be untrue, but it sure is out there that our community is business unfriendly. I believe in high standards, and I believe that we have great zoning ordinances with those high standards. But I think that we need to allow business to come in and make recommendations on how to achieve those standards and not dictate how those standards are achieved. I'm dedicated to the very best quality of life for all of our citizens, and I'm willing to promote issues that achieve that goal. I'm committed to preserving the natural beauty and quality of life that we all enjoy. I believe in strong neighborhoods where we know each other and help each other. I'm eager to spark new and renewed interest in the transportation improvements needed to mitigate traffic congestion on west side of I-49. I would like to serve you, the citizens of Ward 4, as your representative on the City Council. I pride myself in honesty, integrity, and service above self. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Great.
Okay. Like I'd mentioned earlier, I ran for City Council in 2008. I ultimately lost, obviously. You know, and that was tough to take, but it was a learning experience for me. The reasons I lost were name recognition, experience, all these things that make you a good representative for a ward like Ward 4. So I took it to heart. I got involved with Fayetteville Forward. I joined the Planning Commission. I interviewed. I took the opportunity, like anybody can, to interview with the City Council, and I was chosen to be part of the Planning Commission. The amount of experience that I've gained through that, the ties that I've made back through the community, the people that I've talked to, the ties back to city council, to the attorney's office, just over and over and over again, the experience that I gained through that is just really I have so much pride in what I've done for the entire city of Fayetteville. I'd like to continue that as being a representative of everybody in Ward 4. Obviously, I'm for economic development. I've worked closely with the Chamber of Commerce, Chung Tan. I was part of the committee that's done the renovation out in the industrial park. I'd love to see that industrial park full again. Having been out there for 20 years, with the businesses that have come and gone, those families, they get impacted. It impacts me. I see it. I know how it goes. And when I ran last time, I got 1,800 votes, and a certain mayor told me, if you get 1,800 votes, you'll get elected. And I got my 1,800, but I got beat because she had 3,300. So appreciate the vote. Please remember me on November 4th. Thank you.
You gotta have 3,500 votes to get elected. Holy cow.
I am committed to improving the quality of life to those that I serve. And tonight, coming here, I was very nervous because I've spent this weekend researching and talking to people about the issues of Ward 4. But what I'm going to say is the most effective leaders are the ones who are compassionate and the ones who care about people. And I've been proven to care about people. I'm concerned about everything that concerns you. So therefore, I'm committed to working for Ward 4. Fayetteville is moving upward, and I do believe that our city government must continue to move upward. So please, sir, please, ma'am, I would love your support. This job has a learning curve like any other opportunity, and I'm committed to making it work. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, that was the end of our questions. We want to give our candidates a big round of applause. So after this, we'll adjourn the meeting. I'm sure the candidates would love to stick around and meet everyone, because that's what they do.
I was thinking about
they
going to
still want
Hartford.
your vote, all of them. So it's 7:30, so we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting now, but please stay around.